Some of it's going to be a little bit boring, but I'll tell you what, it's the exact same advice that I've given clients for over 25 years, that if people do this and implement this, it's going to literally change their life. I even give you the stock investments that I would recommend. I didn't want it to be a shelf-help book. I wanted it to be a self-book book where people can leave with real actionable strategies that will significantly change their life.
Well, Rob, hello. This is, of course, our masterclass interview for the launch of your upcoming book, Close Your Wealth Gap. I'm excited to have this conversation with you. I know how much time and effort you've put in years of experience just to bring something like this for consumers to digest and benefit from. And it kind of leads me to my first question. And I've been in healthcare a long time, most of my career, and I couldn't help but imagine the parallels to why you launched and wrote this book around, in healthcare, you have challenges with access and affordability and the quality of healthcare. I couldn't help but find parallels to what you did with Close Your Wealth Gap. Maybe explain that to me and what your thinking was in bringing this to the consumers to benefit from.
Yeah, it's a great question. And you're right, in terms of the ambiguity around really understanding the healthcare system. And also, let's be quite honest, one of the reasons why I wrote this book is, unfortunately, if you're not in that upper demographic in terms of earnings, you kind of get sometimes with whatever is left and available to you. And so, the primary reason I've done what I've done in terms of wealth and helping people accumulate wealth over, vast periods of time is to give them that choice and control over that life. And I think that's the one thing that money does for all of us. And I've never met anyone that says I want less choice. Everybody wants more choice. But at that point, why did I write the book? Why did I do it now? As you know, Derek, I sold my wealth management for a few years ago, where I worked primarily with ultra high net worth people. And the problems you deal with the ultra high net worth are not the common everyday problems that most people are dealing with. And when I left that space and I started, educating people, I really realized how bad that was. And so it was something that I wanted to do. And, just one of these things where I got a call out of the blue from Wiley. And Wiley's largest publisher of financial books out there, a lot of books on my shelf. I remember through college citing Wiley. So I said, okay, if I'm going to do a book, this is definitely who I like to do it for. And just as any entrepreneur, it's never going to be the perfect time. But, the idea of the size of this problem, the fact that it's so widely publicized of the wealth gap, and I could see it's only getting worse, I said, okay, let me do it. Now, it took a lot more time, effort, energy, and resources than I thought it was going to do. But the idea was, how do I take my 25 years of knowledge, experience, not only of what I've done right, but what I wish I did and what I did wrong. I made a lot of mistakes myself and a lot of mistakes my clients made. That 25 years of mistakes probably is what I'm then combining in this book to show you what not to do first, but importantly, what to do so that you and your family can make the choices that are best for you.
Yeah. And Rob, I love the fact that it is kind of access for all. And you have tools and you have spreadsheets and you have modules that guide everyone across the spectrum of financial literacy. Talk to me about that, because those, I think, are the most maybe underrated components of your book, are those tools and modules that allow someone to really plug and play.
One thing I say, Derek, is that time is the greatest ally and enemy of wealth. And so when you think about it, compounding interest works because it works over a long period of time. Everybody wants to retire or whatever it is. But I think most people would much rather spend their 40s and 50s cruising around the world than doing it when they're 85 or 90. So the idea is, how do we shorten the time, which, as you and I know, it's about how do we minimize mistakes? How do we have people start doing the wealth building activities as early as 18, 19, or if you're a parent, how do you get your kids started younger? So that way they're not realizing when they're 50 or 60, oh, if I only would have done that one little thing 20 years ago, how could that happen? And so I'm just a big proponent of not wasting people's time. And so if I go to a conference or I read a book or I pay for some type of education, I do that with the idea that when I leave, I'm going to be able to take that piece of information and implement it into my life, my business, and that will extrapolate and my time spent on that activity, reduce the time trying to get to that desired outcome. And so what I wanted to do, people are going to spend $30 on this book. For some people, that's a lot of money. And I realized that I wanted to make sure it wasn't just, this high level, pie in the sky, invest in stocks, invest in real estate. There's so many conferences, speakers, books out there like that do that, to where, look, some of it's going to be a little bit boring, but I'll tell you what, it's the exact same advice that I've given clients for over 25 years, that if people do this and implement this, it's going to literally change their life. There's action plans, like you said here, that will tell you exactly what to do. If you're investing in stocks, is one of the things I talk about. I even give you the stock investments that I would recommend, whether you're investing for your kid or you're 70 years of age. If you're on track, off track, I just didn't want any excuses for people to pick this up and not do anything with it. I didn't want it to be a shelf help book. I wanted it to be a self-help book where people can leave with real actionable strategies. I think multiple of them that will significantly change their life. That was the idea of that. Now, let me just say, what I wanted to do is make the book enticing, entertaining, and all those things. So I try to do that with sharing some stories, and hopefully that resonates with the audience. But again, it's not just about entertaining, it's educating. And this idea of the wealth gap, the only way that we're going to close that wealth gap is by improving people's financial literacy. So I wanted to make sure we could do that.
Yeah, I was 25 once. I don't know if you could believe that, but I was. And I got a lot of books on my shelf, and stock cap analysis, cash flow analysis, valuation models, all these modern theories. And it was just over my head at 25.
Yeah.
And what I loved about the simplicity of your approach, we're talking balance sheet, net worth, cash flow, and you blow those out, obviously, so you can get those tangible answers to guide your financial goals. But maybe talk to me about that simplicity, because I think that's where we all have books on our bookshelf.
Yeah.
And, the complexity of some of those. By the way, there's 50,000+ financial books on Amazon available. Yeah. There's a lot.
Thanks for telling me that now after I agreed to, right?
And they're all probably not approached the way you have approached this opportunity. So that's, the simplicity is what really jumped out at me about, the education that a person gets.
Well, I think, I had a professor one time tell me that true intelligence was demonstrated by taking something super complex and putting it in a way that a 10-year-old would understand it. I think too many people and authors do the exact opposite. They try to impress people with their knowledge. And so what I really wanted to do, again, going back to the idea of how do I make it approachable and actionable? And I say in the book, we're not going to get into cash flow analysis or mergers and acquisitions or any of these high-level strategies, because that's the stuff that people see, and it's just, they read it, they don't understand it, they close it, and they learn absolutely nothing from that book. So what I try to do is break it down to where everyone can understand it. I have a wealth academy that I teach, and I was actually talking to my people today about the credit crisis, what's going on. Banks are getting downgraded, US government debt is getting downgraded. And most people, the truth is, don't even understand what these credit agencies are or what they do. And so they don't understand, well, why is it even important that US debt got downgraded? Why is it important that the banks got downgraded? And so I was trying to think of how am I going to explain this to people who don't know it. Well, the truth is, most adults do know what a FICO score is. We all have a credit score, right? And we understand that we've got to make money and we got to have just a small amount of debt to be able to qualify for a house. So what I told people is, if you just think about that exact scenario, the people that are underwriting you, approving your loan, well, there's this group of people that do the same thing on companies and the government debt. And the lower their FICO is, the more they're going to have to pay. The more debt they have, the more they're going to have to pay. And that's simple explanation. People are like, oh, I get it. It's just like validating whether a buyer is a good risk or bad risk. So not everything is that easy, but and not saying some people might not know what a FICO score is, but what I try to do is not take for granted that most people, unfortunately, their baseline level of knowledge in terms of anything financial, even college educated people, because we don't teach this in our schools, is very low. So one thing I'm always trying to do, Derek, is just make things simpler, easier, not trying to impress anybody, but just trying to help people.
Well, I'm going to put you on the spot.
Yeah.
Because I love your 6 magic shortcuts.
Yeah.
Really simple, really impactful. Do you have a favorite?
Yeah. I mean, it's tough in terms of favorite just because, first of all, anyone you read them will be able to learn them really quick. I think they're all pretty important. I might tell you too, one is kind of the 30-year millionaire rule. The reason I think that's important is what I do is I show people how in 30 years anyone can become a millionaire. So remember, we talked about time and trying to expedite that. So if you kind of learn that at 40, it's not going to actually be this way because the compounding of numbers, you're going to be 70s, 80s until you do it. But if you start at 18, all you have to do is invest $125 a week, put it into an S&P fund. By the time you are 48, you will be a millionaire, tax-free. And I show people exactly how they can do that inside of my book. Now, when you think about that, the average retiree retires with about $200,000 when they retire. This makes sure that people, by the time they do that, they're 48, they're going to have $1 million. If you think about the crisis in this country right now, I just read a new updated stat, 57% of Americans could not afford to cover an emergency $1,000 or more from their savings, 57%. So it's a huge problem where $125 a week. Look, I even talk about little side hustles where you can do that. I think I was making that selling baseball cards once a week when I was 15, 16. There's zero excuses. And that's what this book about is zero excuses. I'll show you how to get the $125. I'll show you how to invest that $125 in a way that is tax-free. So by the time you're 48 years of age, you will be a millionaire. You want to be a 10 millionaire or 20 millionaire, fine. But if I can get everyone to be a millionaire by 48, I think I'll made my mark in the world, Derek.
Okay, you said 2. So you said pick one or the other.
Yeah, the next one, I think, because it's something everybody should know, I call it their magic number, is what's your retirement number? How much do you need to save to be able to retire? And that's my rule of 20. Basically, what that says is if you take how much you spend and you times that by 20, that's going to give you exactly the amount of money that you need to save. If I ask you how much, or I ask anyone, how much do I need to retire? It's like asking him to solve, some crisis, that the war between Israel and Palestine. No one's been able to do it, right? It's like asking them to do that just to know how much they need to retire. Okay, go back, see how much you spent. And even I show them a quick way to do that. How much you saved. How much did you save last year? 0. How much did you make? 80,000. Well, you spend $80,000 a year. If you take that times 20, you need $1.6 million to retire to be able to continue to spend $80,000 a year. Very simple. There's a million different ways and calculators and time to get there, but it all basically within 98% will get you to that same number. Your expenditure times 20, rule of 20.
Love that one. I love that one as well. And you kind of hit on the know your why. And I know you kind of talked about that throughout your book. And again, another thing that when I read it, what hit me was everyone's why is different.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. It's not, here's a book to be a billionaire. And so if you don't want to be a billionaire, then don't read the book. It is know your why.
Yeah.
It guides you. Maybe talk about how does one establish their why? Like, because it's a really fundamental part of how you start. You got to know where you want to be.
Yeah. I mean, it's really important, Derek. And I spent a little bit of time talking about the behavioral side. I actually start that at the beginning of the book because I try to condition people to understand why this is important to them. Because to your point, if I just wrote a book for billionaires or people who are only making $24,000 a year, it's going to turn off the rest of the audience. And so what I wanted to do is make this book really available to everyone, you to define who it is, where you want to be, and then give you the tools to be able to get there. And so, defining your why, to me, again, I think I said this a little while ago, I think we're all really, I call it in the book, work optional, not retire. We're all really investing for the ability to have, somewhat unlimited choice, to be able to make the best decisions for our families. So, God forbid, we have a sick family member, we can go to the best doctor to give them the best opportunity for success. We also know, hey, by having a higher income, we could eat healthier food, right? We all know the fast food pandemic that we have in this country. Well, fast food, it's a lot cheaper to feed your family McDonald's than it is to go to Whole Foods and buy organic food. So the why is really dependent on you. And I work with, really wealthy people for a long period of time. Everyone's definition of wealth is very, very different. And one thing I learned a long time ago is like, I really don't care what people want. What I do care about, though, is if people settle for some second class, subpar version of what they really could be. Unreached potential to me is one of the biggest sins. If you are a healthy person and you're willing to put in the work and get the knowledge, and I try to provide that financial knowledge, I truly believe, I talk a little bit about my own story. You can do whatever you want in this country, which all the political stuff that's going on and everything, I still firmly believe, and I hope this will always be the best country in the world to be able to create opportunity and do what you want to do. And I don't want to take that away from anyone. So your why should be, when you sit back and think, what would I really want to live? Where do I really want to send my kids to school? Or what charity do I really want to donate to? And when you figure out all those things, I then tell people, okay, that's great, but let's put a number to that. So if that's that rule by 20 or whatever that is, and I tell everyone to work from right to left. Figure out what is your why, which is your right. Where do you want to be? But let's just not have some arbitrary idea of it. Let's quantify that number, right? And then now let's figure out, how long is it going to take to get there? What activities do we need to do to be able to get there? And if you do those things for that certain period of time, you're going to reach that work optional number. Where I say work optional because I'll probably work forever. I love what I do, but I don't necessarily want to work with some of the same people that I worked with 10 years ago, or I don't want to go to some of the events that I went to, 5 years ago. I want to be able to do what I want to do when I want to do it, because it brings joy to myself or my family. And that's really why I think at the end of the day, most people should even care about financial literacy or the stock market or real estate or investing in businesses, not because of those things, but because that simple idea of giving you the power of choice and freedom. I think that's what money's about.
Well said. And, going back to my 25-year-old self again and thinking, why wasn't this book available when I was 25? Though I was encouraged to know, there's a cost of waiting, and you talk a lot about cost of waiting, but I'm not 25 anymore. And so I was still yet really highly encouraged that you have plans for these age buckets.
Yeah.
Changes your strategies, your approaches, your tactics, but you just didn't say, hey, you have to be 25 and here's that plan. I maybe talk through with me a little bit about, how you've kind of bucketed these age groups and provided tactical approaches for each one of them.
Yeah, and that's the part of the book in the middle of the meat of the action plans. It does get a little bit dry. The great thing about it, though, is you can pick exactly where you don't have to read all of that. That's the one part of the book where I'll tell you don't have to read the whole thing. So that'll shorten the reading time. Just figure out where you're at, what you're trying to do. If you have kids, there's a plan for them. Because again, it's about actionable strategy and time. I wanted to create a book where, hey, you don't really have to read everything. Read kind of the beginning, the end, and then the whole middle part is basically just finding maybe 1/8 of it that gives you what you exactly need today. But also, as you age, it's something that can sit on your shelf. You can pull it off and go back and say, okay, I started this when I'm 25. Now I'm 35. Where should I be at? And so what I tried to do is give people an idea of, here's kind of $1 million retirement, whatever it is. Here's what you need to do. Now, if you want 2 million, you got to do twice that. And I showed you, if you start that for your kid, what the trajectory looks like and the things you need to do. I showed you if you do it right after college, what it needs to do. But I also realized there's people in their 40s or 50s that are way, way behind. They're like an ostrich burying their head in the sand. They don't want to face it. Nothing ever gets better by hiding from it, right? No matter, I tell clients that all the time, or people that I coach and teach all the time, It's what we want to do is face reality. Only with reality can we create an action plan that's going to get us to where we need to go. I promise you, if you continue to bury your head, it's only going to get worse. So I thought about that in the book to say, hey, here's where you should be. But if you're way behind, if you're 60% behind that or 70, that's okay. You just need to work a little bit harder. You might need to work a little bit longer, but here's a plan for you. Now, I probably didn't encompass every situation in the world, but I think with simple mathematic tweaks to it, just about everybody will be able to find their path in that part of the book.
And a lot of that's between your ears, like you said. It takes work. You can read the book, you can adjust it, you can understand the principles. You have to apply them to get results. And you talked, I love this word, wealth maximizing mindset.
Yeah.
You hit on it a little bit. Explain that to people. Like, what is that?
Yeah. I mean, I'm still working on improving my wealth maximizing mindset. Now, it's not the simple, basic, fundamental things that I had to do earlier, but it's trying to think, okay, now that there's all these different things going on in the world, high interest rates, political, okay, how can I expand the way I think to be able to make sure that every decision I make is the wealth maximizing decision? Meaning, is that decision going to get me closer or further away from my wealth maximizing options? So is the opportunity to max out my Roth IRA this year better than going to that Taylor Swift concert for $2,000 a seat? Probably is. Now, that's obviously a very simplistic explanation, but from the most basic things that most people aren't even thinking about to more complex issues, I try to just create a mindset to think and get people to always understand that every decision you make financially is going to have a trade-off, either good or bad. It's going to get you further away from where you want to be. It's going to provide you with more risk, meaning doing a lot of the things that you don't really want to do, working longer, talking to people that you don't want to do, versus getting you to that point where you get to do what you want. And so I talk a lot about that and the wealth maximizing decision. I say that to my clients, to my students all the time. Is that, just think about it, is that the wealth maximize? Probably not. Then you have your answer.
Love it. So you mentioned Wealth Academy a little earlier.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that and the benefit for anyone reading this book, because I think that is a fundamental tool also available. But talk to me about the Wealth Academy.
Yeah, so the Wealth Academy was, truly my idea of how do you solve the wealth gap in America, because everybody's complaining about it. Nobody's doing anything. The truth is the government won't do anything for you. As a matter of fact, we all see what's happening with the deficit out there. The idea of Social Security being around for everyone, I wouldn't bank on that, which really means today, more than ever, you have to be able to take care of yourself financially, make those, financial decisions that are going to put you on a path for success.
Well, the benefit to consumers, it does bridge itself from when you think of the tools in the book that allow you to create this wealth maximizing mindset. The Wealth Academy, to me, is an extension.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So great. So, so I basically built this Wealth Academy to be able to, first of all, people are going to read this book. I talk about a few things. I talk about focus, clarity, execution, and accountability. Those are 4 things that I've learned over a long period of time for myself, through others. If you want to be successful, you have to have all 4. Focus, meaning, okay, what is my 20 times number? Where do I need to be? Okay, got it. What's the clarity? The clarity is, what am I going to buy? What am I going to invest in? How am I going to file my taxes? So that's kind of the roadmap. The execution is making sure you do it. How are you going to do that? What's the discipline to do it? And we all know there's a reason Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, Tiger Woods had coaches, is they needed accountability to perform at their highest level. So you need that accountability. So the goal with the Wealth Academy was to instruct, teach people. We do this on a weekly basis live. We have pre-recorded courses to not give people any excuse. We do office hours with certified financial planners to where they will help hold you accountable to make sure you're executing on the things that you're going to do. So that was kind of my idea. And truthfully, the Wealth Academy I created after I sold my firm, that's really what indoctrinated me into the world of just the average person, which I was myself, but I was taken so far out of that working with wealthy people for 2 decades to where I realized, a lot of people need this information. And so when the book opportunity came, That's why I jumped on it. Where the Wealth Academy, I tried to make very affordable. However, $30 is a lot more affordable. So the idea is, how do I make it excuse free where everyone can get the same knowledge?
Right. Yeah. I've attended them and they're just valuable. And, like you said, current events, contemporary, as they're happening, great questions from your members. So, it's a really well done event.
Yeah.
So you do, you have your corporate events, you speak all over, we see you on Fox Business. A lot of people ask you questions every day.
Yeah.
There are common or most popular questions during your interactions that, a personal finance question that just always seems to rise to the top.
Well, yeah. I mean, the number one I've been hearing for decades, and like, as you say, like now that, I do a little bit more media, social media, a lot of people come up to me, hey, Rob, what should I buy? What is the stock that I buy? Like, everybody wants that one tip that's going to make them a multimillionaire. And
I got my pen.
yeah, exactly. I'm sure a lot of people are waiting on right now. What I'm going to tell you is going to significantly disappoint you. But here's the thing: you're going to understand exactly why I'm saying this after you read the book. Is I don't know what you're trying to do, right? If you're 30 years away from retirement, I'm going to talk to you about buying some really aggressive investments that are going to help you get there over time. If you're somebody, though, that doesn't even have an emergency fund, meaning you spend $3,000 a month and you don't have at least $9,000 in a money market or a CD to get you through, because I don't want you to be like 57% of Americans where you can't get through $1,000 emergency, which I promise you will happen at some point in life. I'm probably going to tell you the best investment is a CD or a money market account. And so it really depends on where you're trying to get in life and what the best investment is going to make. And that's the idea of really the best investment outside of reading this book is in knowledge, which this book provides, right? If you invest in yourself, that's really, quite honestly, I've had some success in my life. I've got degrees on the wall. People knock education or whatever it is. Without those college degrees, I never would have had the opportunity. I never would have had the knowledge. And now, education is changing, but I'm continually trying to learn, develop myself. Those are the things that are going to really, help you again create that wealth maximizing mindset.
Right. One question, final question.
Yeah.
It's the one thing you want people to take after reading Close Your Wealth Gap.
Yeah, I want them to take away the idea that they alone are responsible for their financial future, and that the idea of I don't know or it's over my head is just an excuse, and excuses are going to keep you exactly where you're at today. And if you look at some of the threats like artificial intelligence and all those things, if you're not keeping up, adapting, it could be worse than being where you're at today. You could start going backwards. And so this book is pretty much a first step in how do you put yourself in a position to take control of your own financial future, which is probably the most important thing I want people to take.
Couldn't have concluded any better, Rob. Thank you so much. I was driven to you from your mission right out of the gate about providing financial access, literacy, quality advice to help all people achieve their financial goals. And so I want to thank you for putting your time and effort and expertise to allow everyone to benefit from. So thank you for your time today, and good luck on the launch of your book.
Thanks so much.